One of the most important Middot that we often don't even realize is a Midah is listening. Some people define themselves as good listeners. Others never even thought about it as a quality, but it very much is. The Mishnah speaks of Shmiat Ozen as one of the 48 necessary ingredients to acquiring Torah. It happens to be quite high in the list. In fact, it's the second thing listed. We all know the difference when we're in a conversation with someone who listens well and someone who doesn't. It's a different world. There are a few reasons that make people bad listeners. Some people are so full of themselves that they don't think they need to hear from anyone else. Most people, I think, don't fall into that category. We all realize we need input from others. Well, if so, what makes us bad listeners? A lot of times, it's bad habits. We cut off people. We're impatient. Today, we have the amazing grip of our smartphones, which distract us from listening well. Or maybe we just never realized there was something to being a good listener. So maybe the first step in being a great listener is to slow down and don't cut off your conversation partner. A striking example of this is the way they used to speak in the Kelm-based medrash in Europe. I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Tzvika Shalevsky, who I believe heard from Rav Elia Lopian, the famed mashgiach who had learned in Kelm. And Rav Elia related that they would ask the person that was speaking, listen to this, Gamarta ledaber, have you finished speaking? Before launching into their response. Listening, of course, has two parts. One is the practical aspect. Are you focused and hearing the other person or cutting them off and not really paying attention? And two, even if you're doing that, are you hearing deeply what someone is trying to say? What do they mean? What's behind their words? Interestingly, one could be good at the first aspect and not the second aspect, and vice versa. You can activate the necessary discipline to hear another person, but don't really listen deeply about what they're saying. You can also have great intuition about what others mean, but don't bother to allow them to say their whole piece, and you jump to conclusions too fast. So you really need both those aspects. Focusing and hearing fully what another person is trying to say, and giving your intuitive ear to hear deeper what they want to get to. Now, let's think parenting. How many parents don't really listen to their children? We might offer them advice, we might try to educate them, but how much are we stopping to hear them? And the funny thing is, it doesn't make sense. Why? Because we're all really curious about what's really going on with them. If we really are curious, it's strange that we don't take the time to hear them. There is a parenting book, which I'm sure many of you have seen, called How to Speak So Children Will Listen and Listen So Children Will Speak. I don't know about the contents, but that is a tremendous title. If we want our children to speak to us, we have to be poised and listen in a way that they will want to speak. Imagine for a moment the conversations you have with your children. Now, if you were the child, would you want to speak to someone like that? We began with some of the challenges in the general midah, the general characteristic of listening. Let's add some of the specific challenges which we face in the parenting context. I would like to elucidate 3 points. 1, it's especially a challenge to listen to our children because we don't have to. When a coworker wants our attention, the etiquette of the workplace indicates that we listen to them. If we don't listen to our spouse, eventually they will let us know. But a vulnerable child won't let you know. He will do something far worse. He will stop talking. 2, another part of the challenge is, frankly, often our children are saying things which aren't all that interesting to us. We were all children long ago. and are well past that time, and their interests aren't our interests. And 3, we have more of a need to correct our children than we do to others we listen to. We have to show them the way. We have to point out the faults in their logic. So we interrupt them. No, just be quiet and let them talk. These are 3 things to be especially aware of that make it all that difficult, even if we're good listeners in other aspects of our life, not to be so in our parenting. I'd like to add 2 more points. Sometimes our children tell us things we don't approve of. The story about their behavior or their friend's behavior is unacceptable. We must say something. Before you do that, think again. If your child thinks speaking to you evokes negative reactions, she will stop speaking. It's probably worth it to keep the pipeline of communication open by smiling and keeping your feelings to yourself. Another thing, we mentioned earlier that often our children speak to us about things that don't interest us. The truth is, as they get older, they often get more interesting. We also feel more of a need to know where a child stands during complicated teen years as opposed when they're younger in a less complicated stage of their lives. Well, here's the point. If you want them to speak to you when they're older, you better speak to them when they're younger. If a child has developed a pattern of including his parents in what is going on with him when he is younger, it is far more likely that he will do so and she will do so as they grow. But if you don't put the effort in when he is younger and less interesting, it will be that more open to open them up as they get older. The pasuk says, "Shim'u v'techi nafshechem." Listen and bring life to your souls. Listening is an amazingly underrated midah, but it brings life. If this is true generally, it is super true in the parenting context.